Hi, hello guys, it's Jamali Senpai here, again back for another YouTube video slash live research stream. If you are on YouTube, consider watching me live at Twitch if your schedule permits at Jamali Senpai. And if you are not on YouTube, go ahead. Wait, no, I meant to say that if you are on YouTube, if you're watching me on YouTube and not at Twitch, consider watching me live at twitch.tv/Jamali Senpai. And if you are watching me on YouTube, welcome. We're looking to do these videos every Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So 3 times a week I will be releasing videos, and I'll do different topics each day. So look forward to that if you're someone who's enjoyed just watching, having my stuff on in the background, discussing these things so that you can become informed or form your own opinion separate of mine. I hope my research is fulfilling enough to provide you with enough information where you feel like, one, you can either reasonably look up the information that I gave you so that you can form your own opinion, not heard from my mouth. You can go and look it up yourself. I always leave links to all of the things that I use as evidence or as citations for the things that I'm talking about. And today we're talking about, not really talking about Leah Thomas herself, but we're talking about the issue of trans women and sports, which seems to be a big problem recently. And it means that there's a lot more talk going about if trans women should be able to compete in the same category as women. Or if, the amount of time that someone goes through hormone therapy is enough to qualify. Keep in mind, if I'm not mistaken, Leah Thompson, under the previous NCAA guidelines, did pass the test that she needed to in order to compete in the competition, the swimming competition that she did. And it is... I think the NCAA has changed their guidelines on this now, but for the most part, I want to talk about the actual conversion, the hormones and stuff like that, and then we'll get into some of the topics of whether or not trans athletes should have their own sports and whatnot. I have a couple of tabs up already because I've been looking this up before the stream. I wanted to be a little prepared in terms of what I was going to be speaking to you guys about. So here we go. We're just going to go into the first article that I have up, and that is that DeSantis courts further controversy by honoring swimmer who finished second to Leah Thomas. This article is essentially from CNN, and it essentially is going to say how, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis essentially crowned a Florida native who is also a part of the same race as Leah Thomas the winner. I'm not sure. I don't think that has any actual bearing or weight to it, so I don't think it matters. But let's read the article. It's a short one, so we'll be able to read this article and go on to the rest of the tabs that we have here. Florida Governor Ron... Oh, wait, let me turn this down. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis waded into fresh territory on Tuesday with the proclamation honoring the collegiate swimmer who recently placed second to University of Pennsylvania swimmer Leah Thomas, the first transgender athlete to win an NCAA Division I title. The Republican governor, already embroiled in a fight with Disney over the state's so-called Don't Say Gay bill, claimed that the NCAA is perpetuating a fraud and declared University of Virginia freshman and Florida native Emma Wyatt the rightful winner of the race. Wyatt had finished about 1.75 seconds behind Thomas, who has come to personify the ongoing discourse on trans women's participation in sports and the balance between inclusion and fair play. The NCAA... Why did I say the NCAA? I think that's what the double part is for. The NCAA is basically taking efforts to destroy women's athletics, the Republican governor said in a news conference. They're trying to undermine the integrity of the competition and crown someone else. The NCAA currently requires trans women athletes to have 1 year of hormone replacement therapy, HRT, to be cleared to participate in women's sports. Thomas said she started HRT in May 2019 and came out as trans that fall, and the NCAA has approved her participation in the women's field. Tuesday's proclamation comes against the backdrop of DeSantis' showdown with Disney over the controversial Florida bill that would ban classroom instruction about sexual orientation and gender identity before fourth grade. Doesn't Florida have like an abnormally high rate of like dads doing things to their daughter? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe, I don't even want to look it up. I shouldn't have even said that. That's I didn't mean to muddy the waters. A day after Disney CEO Bob Chapek publicly condemned the legislation, which DeSantis has said he will sign into law, the Florida governor ripped Disney as a woke corporation to a room full of supporters. Unlike past GOP leaders, DeSantis has been unmoved by corporate pressures or threats of economic boycott over divisive policies. Rather, he has gained a national following by leaning into fights no matter who is on the receiving end, a strategy that was on full display Tuesday as he entered debate sparked by Thomas's win in the women's 500-yard freestyle event. In Florida, we reject these lies and recognize Sarasota's Emma Wyatt as the best women's swimmer in the 500-yard freestyle, he said in a tweet. While sex is a category that refers broadly to physiology, a person's gender is an innate sense of identity. The factors that go into determining the sex listed on a birth certificate may include anatomy, genetics, and hormones, and there's a broad natural variation in each of these categories. For this reason, critics have said the language of biological sex as used in DeSantis' proclamation is overly simplistic and misleading. A 2017 report in the journal Sports Medicine that reviewed several related studies found no direct or consistent research on trans people having an athletic advantage over cisgender peers at any state of their transition, and critics say postures like DeSantis' will only add to discrimination that trans people face, particularly trans youth. A 2017 report. This is the National Library of Medicine. All right, let's look at this real quick. Sport and transgender people, a systematic review of literature relating to sport participation and competitive level. Background: whether transgender people should be able to compete in sport in accordance with their gender identity is a widely contested question within the literature and among sports organizations, fellow competitors, and spectators. Owing to concerns surrounding transgender people, especially transgender female individuals having an athletic advantage, several sport organizations place restrictions on transgender competitors. Must have undergone gender-confirming surgery. In addition, some transgender people who engage in sport, both competitively and for leisure, report discrimination and victimization. Objective: to the author's knowledge, there has been no systematic review of the literature pertaining to sport participation of competitive sports policies and transgender people. Therefore, this review aimed to address the gap in literature. Method: 8 research articles and 31 sport policies were reviewed. Results: in relation to a sport-related physical activity, this review found the lack of inclusive and comfortable environments for the primary barrier to participation for transgender people. This review also found transgender people had a mostly negative experience in competitive sports because of the restrictions the sports policies placed on them. The majority of transgender competitive sport policies that were reviewed were not evidence-based. Conclusion: currently, and this is in 2017, there is no direct or consistent research suggesting transgender female individuals or male individuals have an athletic advantage at any stage of their transition across sex hormones, gender-confirming surgery, and therefore, competitive sport policies that place restrictions on transgender people need to be considered and potentially revised. So this study right here is saying that there's not enough evidence. Currently there's no direct or consistent research suggesting transgender females have an advantage. This is the introduction, the methods of the study. This is a lot, so I'm not going to read all this because I want this video to remain relatively short, but I will, like I said, put the links to everything in the video down below. We already got the results, and if you want to go over the actual study itself, figuring out like how they did everything, I do recommend you click the link below the video so that you can get that information yourself. And I will read this, but I just won't go over this right now in this video because like I said, I want to keep this video under a certain amount of time. Let's finish this CNN article and then we can move on to the next tab. Okay. Still, the debate over the inclusion of transgender athletes, particularly women and girls, has become a political flashpoint in recent years, especially among conservatives. So far this year, Iowa and South Dakota have approved legislation banning transgender women and girls from participating on sports teams consistent with their gender at accredited schools and colleges. And last year, Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Mississippi, Montana, Tennessee, Texas, and West Virginia enacted similar sports bans, infuriating LGBTQ advocates who argue conservatives are creating an issue where there isn't one. Okay. So this is the article from New York. This is an article from New York City, from New York Post, about Leah Thomas. NCAA swimmer wants rule change after missing out on finals to Leah Thomas. So a Virginia Tech swimmer blasted the NCAA over its rule allowing transgender women to compete against biological women after she came up short in a championship qualifying race that was dominated by the University of Pennsylvania transgender swimmer Leah Thomas. Rekha Georgi leveled the criticism in her post to her private Instagram account after missing the cut on Thursday to compete in the finals of the 500 free at the NCAA championships, Fox News reported. It doesn't promote our sport in a good way, and I think it is disrespectful against the biologically female swimmers who are competing in the NCAA. I keep doing that. Georgi said of the rule that has received considerable scrutiny since Thomas has smashed records in her first season competing at a collegiate level as a transgender woman. Georgi also placed blame on Thomas for her failure to qualify. The Virginia Tech swimmer said that she felt the last spot to get into the finals was taken from her because of the NCAA's decision to let someone who is not a biological female compete. Thomas finished with a 4 minutes, 33 seconds, right? 4 minutes, 33 seconds and 82 milliseconds in the preliminaries and ultimately took home the National Women's 500 free title when she won the final race with a time of 4:33. Georgi's letter urged the college sports organization to amend the rule. I'd like to point out that I respect and fully stand with Leah Thomas. I am convinced that she is no different than me or any other D1 swimmer who has woken up at 5 a.m. her entire life for morning practice, wrote Georgi. On the other hand, I would like to critique the NCAA rules that allow her to compete against us, who are biologically women. Georgi has swum for the Hokies for the past 5 years and represented her home country of Hungary in 2016 Olympics in Rio de Janeiro. I know you could say I had the opportunity to swim faster and make the top 16, but this situation makes it a bit different, and I can't help but be angry or sad. It hurts me, my team, and other women in the pool, wrote Georgi. One spot was taken away from a girl who got 9th in 500 free and didn't make it back to the A. One spot was taken away from a girl who got 9th in the 500 free and didn't make it back to the A final preventing her from being an All-American. Every event that transgender athletes competed in was one spot taken away from biological females throughout the meet. The two-time NACC champion, wow, that's... is that a typo? I don't know what that could mean. I'm not even sure what NCAA means, if I'm being honest, and I really don't care. I know it's a sports organization. The two-time NACC champion and two-time All-American swimmer said that the NCAA knew what was coming this past week, criticizing the media frenzy the organization caused by not addressing the issue. It is a result of the NCAA and their lack of interest in protecting their athletes. I ask the NCAA takes time to think about all of their biological women in swimming. Try to think how they would feel if they would be in our shoes. Make the right changes for our sport and for a better future in swimming, Georgi concluded. The NCAA did not immediately respond to the post's request for comment. Thomas has faced some backlash with a number of organizations and athletes questioning the fairness of a swimmer who was born biologically male competing against women. The NCAA made new regulations about transgender athletes earlier this year and essentially left eligibility up to individual sports. I see. So they haven't changed anything after this recent thing, but they changed it earlier this year, and apparently Thomas qualified for it. So let's look at some of the things that trans women go through, particularly when they're transitioning from male to female. This is a study from Medical News Today. It was written in 2021, And so it's relatively recent. That's really good because that'll give us the most information we have. The previous thing we looked at, which was from the National Library of Medicine, right? Yeah. The National Center for Biotechnology Information. Sorry. This study, if I'm not mistaken, was in 2000. This was published in 2016. So this is a little dated. So let's look at something a little bit more recent, and hopefully that'll give us a better understanding of what it is that trans women go through when they're transitioning. Male to female hormone therapy or estrogen hormone therapy can cause a person to experience physical, emotional, sexual, and reproductive changes. Whoa, I didn't know you could change reproductive stuff. That's interesting. Some transgender people transition with the help of medical procedures such as estrogen hormone therapy. This can help the body develop feminine physical characteristics. It can also help to suppress masculine physical traits. This article replaced the term MTF hormones with estrogen hormone therapy. This is because MTF terminology is binary and exclusionary. Not everyone who uses estrogen-based hormone therapy may identify as male or have the goal of becoming female. This article looks at what changes a person can expect and how long these changes take when undergoing estrogen hormone therapy. Sex and gender exist on a spectrum. This article will use the term male, female, or both to refer to sex assigned at birth. Good to know. Estrogen hormone therapy involves an individual assigned a male at birth taking the hormone estrogen to develop certain feminine characteristics. Estrogen stops the pituitary gland from forming gonadotropin, which reduces androgen production. Androgens are a group of hormones that help with reproductive development, among other things. Reducing the number of androgens in the body help a person transition by encouraging changes in fat distribution, breast development, and male pattern hair growth. Doctors may also prescribe other anti-androgen drugs to help the transition process. How long until changes occur? A person may not notice significant changes when starting estrogen hormone therapy. The timeline varies, and some people may see some more significant changes than others. People may notice more changes if they use anti-androgen therapy alongside estrogen therapy. All right, and physical changes. So this is getting down to the nitty-gritty. I hate this being here. Go away, please. Please, okay. Changes to the skin. The University of California, UCSF, note that estrogen hormone therapy can cause the skin to become dry or thin, the pores to become smaller, less oil production. Additionally, a person may become more prone to cuts or bruising and perceive temperature and pain differently. That's irrelevant to what we're trying to figure out here in terms of sports. Breast development, also irrelevant. Fat redistribution, that might be a little interesting. A person can expect fat to collect around their hips and thighs. Muscle mass and strength will decrease. We'll see if there's any more about that. There's more about this later on in terms of how long it'll take. Additionally, arms and legs will appear smoother. This is because the fat below the skin becomes thicker. As the fat under the skin increases and moves, the eyes and face may take on a more feminine appearance. And it's feminine in quotations, which is really interesting. Hair growth is irrelevant to what we're talking about. Other physical changes. A person may notice minor changes in shoe size or height. It is important to note that estrogen hormone therapy will not affect a person's voice. Okay, when will these physical changes occur? According to a 2017 article, let's click this. Is this the same? This is not the same article we wrote, but it is from the same website, which might lead to further proving or further giving this website credibility. But both of these articles will also be linked in down below. Okay, so don't worry about that. A person can expect a decrease in sexual desire and function within 1 to 3 months. However, these changes can take 3 to 6 years to reach their maximum effect. After 3 to 6 months, a person can expect a decrease in muscle mass, softer skin, redistribution of body fat, breast growth, testicles will shrink. It will take 2 to 3 years for these changes to reach their full extent. So 2 to 3 years for this exchange to reach its full extent. We read just earlier, that Thomas had been on had been taking therapy. Yeah, she had been taking therapy since 2019, I believe. Where did we read that? Did we read that over here? Yeah, we read that over here. She's been taking it since May 19, 2019, and it's 2022, so 2020, 2021. So it's been 3 years, And according to this article here on Medical News Today, it says that it should take 2 to 3 years for these to reach their full extent. A 2016 systematic review found that estrogen hormone therapy positively affects the emotional and, okay, these are emotional things, which is also irrelevant to what we are discussing in this. We're talking pretty much about the physical benefits of, or the physical attributes of taking either anti-androgens or estrogen hormone therapy. This is okay. Interesting. Once again, these articles will be leaked. They will be linked below the YouTube video, so feel free to click on that if you want to look more into this. Okay, so based off of what we've read so far. Oh yes, and then there's this, the BJ. How does hormone transition in transgender women change body composition, muscle strength, and hemoglobin? Systematic review with a focus on the implications for sports participation. Now that's what I'm talking about. Okay, abstract. We systematically reviewed the literature to assess how long-term testosterone-suppressing gender-affirming hormone therapy influenced lean body mass, muscular area, muscular strength, and hemoglobin, HGB / hematocrit. Design is a systematic review, and the data sources 4 databases: Biomed Central, PubMed, Scopus, and Web of Science were searched in April 2020 from papers in 1999 to 2020. Eligibility criteria for selecting studies. Eligible studies were those that measured at least one of the variables of interest, included trans women, and were written in English. Results: 24 studies were identified and reviewed. Trans women experienced significant decrease in all parameters measured, with different time courses noted. After 4 months of hormone therapy, trans women having HGB/HCT, that is hemoglobin and hematocrit. I feel like I'm butchering that word, but it's a science word, so I don't care. After 4 months of hormone therapy, trans women have HGB/HCT levels equivalent to those of cisgender women. After 12 months of hormone therapy, significant decreases in measures of strength, LBM, and muscle are observed. The effects of longer duration therapy, 36 months, in eliciting further decrements in these measures are unclear due to paucity of data. I see. There's not enough data. Notwithstanding, values for strength, LBM, and muscle area in trans women remain above those of cisgender women even after 36 months of hormone therapy. So let's just reread that and take that in. Notwithstanding values for strength, LBM, lean body mass, and muscle area in trans women remain above those of cisgender women even after 36 months of hormone therapy, meaning that certain parts of the body, the muscles, and certain parts of trans women's bodies remain above those of cisgender women, meaning that they are still at a higher level than cisgender women. Conclusion. Oh my lord, I've been going through puberty myself, maybe. Conclusion. In trans women, hormone therapy rapidly reduces HGB to levels seen in cisgender women. In contrast, hormone therapy decreases strength, LBM, and muscle area, yet values remain above that observed in cisgender women, even after 36 months. These findings suggest that strength may be well preserved in trans women during the first 3 years of hormone therapy. All right, yeah. Interesting. So reading this article, I've already read this article. I read most of this, and I was going to go back over it in the stream. But there's just a couple of paragraphs that I really wanted to focus on in terms of getting the point across. So from what we know so far, based on the multiple different things that I've read, we know that hormone therapy does reduce muscle mass, lean body mass, as well as muscular strength and other things that would be used to determine how they would participate in sports and how they would compare to women in sports in terms of being a trans woman. And this article does do a pretty good job, I think, of detailing a lot of how exactly they're measuring these things, which, once again, I'm not going to go into all of it, but I will link this down below as well. But I'll read a couple of paragraphs here just so that we can get an understanding for what it is that we're looking at. In endurance sports, HGP is of importance. HGB is a protein carried by the red blood cells that is responsible for transporting oxygen from the lungs to peripheral tissues. Low HGB or low HCT, the volume of red blood cells compared with total blood volume can lead to a diminished supply of oxygen to the tissues and therefore have a direct effect on endurance performance. Typical values for HGB differ between males and females with normal values ranging between 131 and 179 G/L. I'm not sure what this G/L stands for, if I'm going to be honest. I'm a bit stupid, but maybe someone with science expertise can tell me. It wouldn't be gallon per liter, right? That doesn't make sense. We're not talking about we're talking about literal blood cells, I think. I'm pretty sure that doesn't make sense. But anyway, the typical value for HGB differ between males and females with normal values ranging between 131 and 179 G/L for men and 117 to 155 G/L for women. So women naturally have a lower HGB just biologically. They tend to have a lower HGB, and that is something that carries blood from your oxygens to your peripheral tissues, which has which helps you endure certain physical strain. Testosterone exerts. Oh wait, did I skip a thingy? HET values are also higher in males, 42% to 52%, than females, 37% to 47%. Testosterone exerts hold on, I can do this. Erythogenic. Oh, yeah, I'm so good. Testosterone exerts erythogenic effects that results in increase in both HCT and HGB. Since GAHT, I'm not even sure what that means, significantly lower. Oh, I'm guessing maybe that's the compound that they use to convert someone's convert some bodies into one sex or the other. Since GAHT, you know what? Let's just look this up real quick. What is GAHT? For many in the transgender, non-binary community, gender-affirming hormone therapy. Oh, that's what that means. Okay. It's literally what I said, but in the literal sense, it's an acronym. Okay. Since gender-affirming hormone therapy significantly lowers testosterone levels in transgender women, it is possible that they may experience reduction in HCT and HGB, which would be anticipated to negatively affect endurance performance. However, we have already seen the results of this study, and that while it does do that, it doesn't lower it to a point that they are on average lower than other women, than biological women. Biological women still have lower HGB and HCT levels than trans women, even though their HGB and HCT levels are lowered considerably from when they were male. Before they started their gender affirming hormone therapy. That is something to look at. If there is multiple studies saying that even with hormone therapy and after years, it still is something that trans women have the edge on, that might be something to look at in terms of whether or not, one, they need their own category in sports, or two, there needs to be something done in terms of how long they need to be on therapy in order to properly match that of women. If we're seeing a large pool of trans women, by the way, there's already a small pool of trans women, and there's an even smaller pool of trans women who are athletes. If we're seeing that on average, or even just by a large majority, that these trans women are experiencing higher levels of these things, which literally help with endurance performance, that might be something to question or take into question when regarding whether or not they should be participating in women's sports or if they should have their own category. I honestly, I don't really know. And honestly, I don't really feel as though I have much room to say anything, as I'm not really a woman. So I don't really know if I would say for certain that trans women should have their own category, or if they shouldn't be able to participate in women's sports just outright, or if they need to meet a certain criteria. I would say a combination of both what the women in that particular sport would want to say about that is very, very important, whether or not we take their how they feel about it into account. is really important. I think that's something that should be considered, considering that they are allowing people who might have natural physical advantages over them to compete with them in a physical sport. This NCAA swimmer, I did it again. This NCAA swimmer, Rekha Gorgi, is pretty much a good sign of what I'm talking about. This is a woman who competed against Leah Thomas, but had the either the gall, or maybe they just thought that someone should speak out, because I don't really see a lot of other women speaking out against this. Other women who are competing against other trans athletes speaking out necessarily against this. And she voices some pretty decent concerns. She even points out, like, she respects and stands with Leah Thomas. She's not necessarily transphobic, at least from the article, or at least from the interview that she had with these people. She doesn't come off as transphobic to me, at the very least. She comes off as someone who is more concerned about whether or not people who might be competing in her sport that have a natural advantage are pushing out people who are biologically considered to be fit for that particular sport in that competition. And women who are biologically born women have always, I think, sort of voiced some sort of like concern for trans women in their division, in their categories. But I don't think that it's been something that I've heard of lately in sports that trans women have been in. I think the last trans woman that I believe I was familiar with competing in a sport was that fighting one. I forget her name already. But I'm pretty sure her opponent didn't have any complaints, even though she lost. And that's something to take into account. I don't want to completely go ahead and discredit women and say, they're just not good enough, and say that, maybe they shouldn't have trans women competing in these sports with them, because it doesn't allow for the women in these sports to fully shine. And that's a fair argument. But I wouldn't say that, simply because I don't want to downplay the abilities and achievements that the women who are competing against each other have already shown from their history of, like this person, like Georgi said, of getting up at 5 a.m. to swim every day and practice. Like, these are hard trained athletes, and sometimes you lose, sometimes you win. I would be more interested to see if there's a shot, like a searing, like I'm talking like 70-80% trend of trans women dominating other sports that women are in, as opposed to these outliers. These, every now and again you hear about these trans women, which, like I said, there's very few trans women in sports, let alone just trans people in general. There's very few trans women in sports, and you don't hear about them either because they don't win, or they have some big crushing failure that happens before they even compete that stops them from doing it, or they're not allowed to compete in certain states. I would once again implore everyone to just, there's certainly years of research behind this, and this is going off this study, which I think is the most recent one. It takes sources from 1999 to 2020. This has some pretty good merit to it. I think this has some really good backing to it. And I think that if there's going to be any evidence to suggest that trans women have an advantage, it would be articles like this. It would be something like this. Even ones over here that say that, in relation to sport-related physical activities. Okay, no, this is the old one. This is the one from 2016. So that one would be something that would be used to say that it's not conclusive whether or not it is a particular advantage that trans women have. But I know that from this one, that does take more recent studies, it shows that there are some advantages that they would have just based on certain levels of HGB and HCT, which affect endurance and how one is able to properly carry blood from their oxygen to the surrounding tissues. And even though trans women are losing a lot of those values they still retain more than women, which is something that would give them a literal advantage. That's something to take into consideration. I don't think that there is much to do about this Leah Thomas thing or any other trans woman that has competed in anything. I think we're still learning a lot about whether or not it is fair for trans women to be in these sorts of competitions with other women. But a big topic that I think gets overlooked that my friend and other people have brought up is like, are we just going to exclude people based on like maybe abnormities that they have? The anomaly people like Michael Phelps, who literally has like a fucking fish body, and that just happened naturally. But like, should he be allowed to swim? That dude is literally part fish. Like, I don't understand how that would be okay. But trans women who might have a slightly higher advantage in terms of their HCT and HGB levels, who can't do these things, like, and if that is the case, is it better to have them have their own category where they can compete against each other, or should we just have it so that they can't compete at all unless they reach a certain level of HGT, HGB values? And that might be not even enough, even if that were the case, because there's a lot of other things that go into it. So I'm going to read this next paragraph, and it's going to also go into that. In sports, demanding speed and power, muscular strength, and ability to generate high rates of force as recognized as key determinants in athletic success. In cisgender males, increases in testosterone due to puberty promote muscular strength in association with increased muscle, CSA, and increased lean muscle mass. It has been hypothesized that muscle retains a long-term memory, allowing it to perform tasks that it has undertaken many times previously, and myonuclei retention is thought to play an important role in such muscle memory. Myonuclei number is increased with training and with use of anabolic steroids. However, detraining does not diminish the myonuclei number, and it has been hypothesized that cessation of steroids may also not lead to reductions in myonuclei number. Hence, it is possible that strength advantages gained when training in a high testosterone environment may not be fully reversed by testosterone suppression. So, it says it here in this study that it is possible that strength advantages gained when training in a high testosterone environment may not be fully reversed by a testosterone suppression. So if you spent your younger years, you spent a lot of your life working out, training, even getting these gender affirming hormone therapies may not fully reverse the training that those muscles have. And if the hypothesis that that muscles retain some level of memory, allowing you to perform a task over and over again, then that would literally give trans women kind of a pretty decent advantage in these sports. Understanding both the physiological effects of GAHT on athletic performance and the time course of these effects is of importance to decision makers and those undertaking policy review. While it is known that testosterone levels are markedly reduced in transgender women taking testosterone suppressing GAHT, the effect of this hormonal change on physiology and the time course in which these changes occur are less clear. Individual studies provide crucial primary research on the topic, but a systematic review is warranted to provide a robust summary of the available evidence. Because bone mineral density studies have already been subject to systematic review, this review focuses on the physiological changes induced by GHT in trans women that affect athletic performance, specifically LBM, CSA, strength, and HGB/HCT. So they are specifically in this study, they are looking specifically for like lean body mass changes, muscle changes, and the ability to oxygenate your body, essentially. So for muscle mass and body fat changes, it says table 2, which should be up here, right? Is this, no, where am I? Okay, actually, it should just take me to table 2 when I click it. Table 2, CSA changes. 4 follow-up studies investigated the CSA either in the quadriceps, forearms, or calf regions using MRI or peripheral quantitative computed tomography. Of note, 2 of the studies measured the total CSA of the individual MRI or the PQCT. What is PQCT? Let's look this up real quick. High-resolution peripheral quantitative computed tomography is a 3-dimensional imaging technology that uses parallel CT slices captured at the distal tibia and or radius to provide a volumetric as opposed to a real BMD in which, in addition to various micro-architectural parameters for both trabecular okay. This is just used for imaging muscles and stuff, right? Yeah, okay. Image while 2 studies measure the isolated model. So I'll read it. Of note, the 2 measured the total CSA of the individual MRI or PQCT image while 2 studies measured the isolated muscle. A decrease in CSA of 1.5 to 11.7% was reported over periods ranging from 12 to 6 months. So trans women experienced a decrease in the isolated muscles that were studied over a range of 12 to 36 months by a range of 1.5% to 11.7%. That was a decrease that they experienced over the course of 12 to 36 months. One of these studies examined adolescent participants who only reached a final testosterone level of 8.8 nmol/L and exhibited forearm and calf CSA decreases of 4.1% and 8.9% respectively. So this is from adolescents who participated, who reached a final level of 8.8 nmol/L. What is nmol? Let's look it all up, right? We got to make sure we know what we're talking about because I don't know what that is. Nanomoles per liter. I see. So that actually was probably per liter, what I was looking at earlier. And wait, what's a nanomole? What's an nmol? Search. Some medical test reports in nanomoles and a mole is an amount of substance that contains a large number, 6 followed by 23 zeros, or molecules or atoms. A nanomole is a 1/1000th of a mole. Okay. So a decrease in CSA. Oh wait, did we look up what CSA meant? What is CSA? Nope. CSA. Hormones. I'm just trying to find out what CSA means. This is not the same thing because it's lowercase, right? It's cyclosporin, but because it's a lowercase s in the middle, I don't think that's the same thing. Or maybe it is. The use of the immunosuppressive drug is limited. So it's immunosuppressant drug? Interesting. We'll see. We'll just read this and see what it says. It might actually give us the answer here. The first study reported a 9.5 decrease in quadriceps CSA compared with baseline after 12 months, and an 11.7 decrease in quadriceps CSA compared with a baseline after 36 months. The second study reported a 1.5 decrease in tibia CSA compared to with a baseline after 12 months, and a 3.8 decrease compared with a baseline after 24 months. The same study reported that compared with baseline, forearm CSA was decreased by 8.6 after 12 months, yet at 24 months was 4.4% lower than baseline, indicating that forearms CSA was 4.2% larger at 24 months than at 12 months. There was only one study in which the limit of agreement indicated a chance of 95% CI. 2 cross-sectional studies compared trans women with cisgender men. One study reported 9% smaller CSA in hormone-naive trans women than in cisgender men, with the trans women undergoing a further 4% decrease in CSA with 24 months of gender-affirming hormone therapy. Trans women in the second study had all undergone at least 48 months of GAHT and had 24% smaller CSA than cisgender men, which just is just affirming that indeed your lean muscle, your lean body mass will decrease absolutely from taking hormone therapies, which I think we've already sort of like considered that was the truth. Of interest, compared with cisgender men, hormone-naive trans women demonstrate 6.4% to 8% lower LBM, 6% to 11.4% lower muscle CSA, and 10 to 14% lower hand grip strength. This disparity is noteworthy when given that the hormone-naive trans women and cisgender men have similar testosterone levels. Explanations for this strength difference are unclear, but may include trans women actively refraining from building muscle and or engaging in disordered eating, or simply not being athletically inclined, perhaps influenced by feeling of an unwelcome presence in sporting arenas. Taken together, hormone-naive trans women may not, on average, have the same athletic attributes as cisgender men. The need to move beyond simple comparisons of cisgender men and women to assess the sporting capabilities of trans women is imperative. So there's just, once again, not enough studies to suggest why this is. So there's a trend of cisgender men and hormone naive trans women. I'm guessing that means hormone naive trans women. I'm guessing hormone naive trans women is talking about people who have not taken gender affirming hormone therapy. Yes, I keep forgetting what that stands for. This systematic review identified studies that assessed the changes in LBM, CSA, muscular structure, and HGB/HCT in non-athletic trans women following GHT. However, several limitations are noted. Although the data we present are meaningful, the effects of GHT on these parameters, or indeed athletic performance in transgender people who engage in training and competition, remain unknown. The levels of physical activity of the trans women compared with cisgender women in the studies were not reported. Other limitations include the studies being written in English only and the research being conducted in Western countries, contributing to geographical bias. Furthermore, as with much research with transgender individuals, there is a sparse data risk because of the small sample sizes and short study durations. Indicative of a relatively small population, difficulties with recruitment and high dropout rates over time, indeed the overlap of participants in the ENIGI studies and a heterogeneous methodology and other studies precluded the possibility of meaningful meta-analysis. However, overall, the results across different study groups and methods, longitude versus follow-up studies, are largely consistent, suggesting that the risk of selective reporting and publication bias are low and the data in the reviewed studies are reliable. This review only focused on binary transgender individuals those who medically transition from their birth assigned gender to the opposite gender did not consider non-binary individuals. Not only are there even more limited data on non-binary individuals, but also for many, their affirmed gender expression does not require GAHT. Thus, there are no hormones-induced changes to observe which would be relevant to this review. Yeah, that makes sense. This is not to say that non-binary inclusivity in sport is not an important issue. Only the central tenets are focused on physiology. We're beating a dead horse here. At this point, we've seen multiple times, written in multiple studies, in multiple ways, in multiple paragraphs, that there is an actual effect on the body once taking hormones, especially gender-affirming hormone therapy, that can amount to a pretty decent decrease of muscle mass, lean body muscle mass, and in certain parts of the area of muscles being affected, as well as the ability to distribute oxygen to your surrounding tissues. And so far from what I've seen, that number still seems to be higher from the limited study of people who they did do this on. Still seems to be higher than women. I don't think that, like, reading more into this, I don't think that there necessarily needs to be anything to be done. I think the situation needs to be monitored, obviously, still. I still think there just needs to be more evidence and more research done into whether or not this is something that affects people on a day-to-day basis. I think that there is a lot to say about, the lack of results from from trans athletes in a multitude of other sports that might be indicative of there being less of advantages and more of these people are noteworthy because they won. And instead of getting riled up at the thought of just a trans woman winning a competition just because they're a trans woman, just honestly look at what we're using to determine whether or not they should be competing in the first place. And if we determine that whether or not what they're doing should be changed, or if it's okay, or if numbers need to be adjusted, or anything like that, relies on whether or not we can do more studies about this sort of thing. So, and in order for us to get that information, we need more studies, and I think that that's totally fine. Once again, I wouldn't want to discount any of the women, the biological women who have, competed in these events. I think that each and every one of them worked their hardest to get to where they are. And I understand being upset about not qualifying for something and being like one place off or something when you know there's a trans woman who is there who beats you, and I get that. But I would implore people to not be as reactionary and to just let a little bit more time go by. We could probably get a little bit more information in a couple more years. I'm not saying like 20 years need to go by. They've been doing research on this from for a while already. It's been multiple years, if not probably decades in certain instances. All of those studies, though, do seem to be a little inconclusive in the fact that they're just not big enough sample sizes, or it's just really hard to get a solid read from what the studies are coming out with, because of the fact that there's just such a small sample size of trans women to take from, as well as the fact that there's just an even smaller amount of trans athletes. So yeah, that's going to be the video for today. This is a long one. I wanted this one to be shorter, and we ended up making this a 51-minute video. So enjoy that. I hope you have, mindless tasks to do in the background while you listen to me read all this stuff. And if you guys are interested in anything that is being discussed here, like I said, throughout the entire video, every single link for every single article and every single research paper that I've read will be in the YouTube description down below. And take the time out to definitely go through this if you have such strong opinions on it, because you would rather be informed and have strong opinions one way or the other. Because if you have strong opinion, and to be perfectly clear, these articles don't necessarily lend credence to one side or the other. If I'm being honest, they generally do tell you that there's just not that much information. We can tell that after 36 months, there's a definite decrease in lean body mass and muscle area and stuff like that in trans women. But those values remain above that of observed cisgender women. So it really is up to you guys to decide. But definitely read these and make sure that you do your due diligence and research. Don't just listen to one person. Don't just listen to me. Don't just listen to whoever else on any other side. Definitely do your own research. But I'm going to end this video, and you guys can either, make your cases heard in the comments. Join my Discord, which should also be in a link down below. If you want to discuss this more in depth, there'll be a channel for it. And also, if you guys want to see me live and have this conversation with me live on my Twitch channel, that is also welcome. I'm at twitch.tv/JamaliSenpai. And I'll see you guys next time with Style and Grace. Stay safe.